Thank you, Mr. Mills. You've given me a new word for the morning, unobtainium. I'm going to ponder that one. Thank you all for your comments this morning. I wanted to start off by probably directing this to you, Mr. Bazillion. When you were talking about the supply chain, you're basically saying all aspects of the supply chain are key when we think about our mineral security here in this country. And I wanted to ask kind of an open, generic question: which piece of the supply chain do we worry most about? And I think you suggested that and I'm reading my own notes that are probably not an accurate reflection of your comments, but you said it's not necessarily the dominance in the production, but the diversity that we would have, the diversity of the supply and demand that creates that resilience. So it's not just about making sure that we are dominating the field, but that we have greater diversity. So in terms of the supply chain and recognizing the key aspects there, is there one part of the supply chain that you're worried most about now? And does that change going forward as you think about the need for diversity within the supply chain?
Thank you, Senator, for the easy question. If you look at China's dominance, which has been brought up several times here this morning about across the supply chain in terms of value add to their economy, you'll see that the added value in the manufacturing sector, from processing to advanced manufacturing, is larger than the funds that they're getting from mining itself, so on the direct supply side. And so they've put some effort into making sure that they're very strong on parts of the supply chain further down from processing to advanced manufacturing. So I think that gives us one clue, that's one way to highlight which parts of that supply chain are important. The aspects of diversity make this, as you know, a very difficult task. We can look at oil and gas as a precedent for how to think about diversity of supplies and functioning markets. But if we're trying to do that across 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 different minerals, it becomes very difficult. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, that each one of these has a very different context, very different supply chain, very different markets, and most of those markets don't function in the way we understand them to function. Say, like the oil market is apparently functioning today. So the diversity is important, but the complexity of this area makes it such that it's hard to draw specific lessons like that.
So let me go to you, Mr. Kang, because when we think about what we have all acknowledged is going to be just an ever-increasing demand, and a recognition that we're going to be looking at significant additional mining, whether it's here in this country or around the world. Your focus on the recycling aspect of it, most of the global recycling taking place in Asia. Your very constructive suggestions that what we need to be doing here, one of the first steps is we need to be collecting more, we need to be expanding our capacity rather than doing the reprocessing elsewhere. What is it here in this country that we can't seem to be recycling much of anything? I mean, we're all in a panic now because China is no longer accepting the recycled product, everything from cardboard to pretty basic things to more high tech and certainly more critical initiatives. Do we just want to make it here and we don't care about the back end of it? What more can we be doing on this? And again, I think you've given us a couple specifics. I like the opportunity zone idea in terms of encouraging more, but what can we be doing there? Because I think that that's going to be a critical part of how we move forward here.
Senator, that's a great question, and I think something that we think about constantly as we are looking to grow our supply to recycle and produce these minerals. I think, you know, what's interesting is, as you mentioned, recycling, most of the world's recycling of lithium-ion batteries resides in Asia, where most of the batteries are manufactured. I think those two are tied together. When you have, you know, one aspect of recycling that I think is very important is that manufacturing scrap can also be recycled. The manufacturers that produce the batteries produce scrap, which is very high and rich in these minerals. And so when you put that back into the refining process, that helps this process be very economically viable. And then when you have access to the raw materials, you have other aspects of the battery manufacturing, precursor manufacturing or cathode material that will naturally just locate next to the recycling. So a couple things. One, I believe that if we can promote our recycling here in the United States by really emphasizing and focusing on collection, creating the supply of batteries. You know, one way we have been working on is to create a curbside collection. You know, minimize the difficulty in taking your batteries and taking them to locations, drop-off centers. I sheepishly will admit I have many phones and gadgets in my drawers at home that I have not thought of or don't have the time to prepare to take to these drop-off locations.
But if we have these drop-off locations and my time is expired, we still are sending them overseas.
That's correct.
We're collecting them. We need to do a better job of collecting them, but at the end of the day, we're still sending them to others.
Well, if you create that
Processing.
supply, yes, and then we can create this recycling industry here, I think that will be a first step in the problem.
Thank you.